Welcome to Beyond Your Why podcast, where we go beyond just talking about your why and actually help you discover and then live your why. You see, we believe that knowing your why, that driving force behind every decision you make and every action you take, is the essential first step to really knowing yourself. It allows you to move forward faster and have a bigger impact. If you're already a fan of the show, then you know that every week we talk about one of the 9 whys, and then we introduce you to somebody with that why so you can see how their why is played out in their life. This show will be more powerful for you if you've already discovered your why. If you still need to do that, head over to WHY.os and discover your why today. It'll only take you about 5 minutes. Now, let's meet today's guest. This week, we're going to be talking about the very rare why of mastery. So if this is your why, you have an insatiable thirst for knowledge, but not at a superficial level. This thirst is all about exploring the depths and intricacies of a particular subject. You'll pursue this goal until you are viewed as an expert in your subject area. You find enjoyment in the sheer act of immersing yourself in something new. You're fearless when it comes to learning about new subjects and ideas, but often cautious when it comes to expressing your thoughts or feelings. You love to peel back the layers of the onion, always go deeper, and look for subtle differences on any given topic. Short answers to questions are a challenge for you because you know they won't get to the depth needed for someone to truly understand the subject being discussed. And so today I have a great guest for you. His name is Michael Walsh. Now, he's a visionary leader, a speaker, an author, known for igniting passion in the business owners and senior leaders he works with by helping them drive their established businesses to growth levels beyond their expectations. Michael has quietly served as the owners and leaders of small to medium-sized businesses for 30 years using 21st century strategies that work. He has supported hundreds of company owners in their quest for business growth and 3 core freedoms: freedom in their business, freedom from their business, and freedom because of their business. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you.
So where are you, tell our audience now, where are you at right now? Where do you live? Where's your business at?
Well, where I live is Vancouver, BC, Canada. And where my business is, we actually work with clients in Canada, the United States, the UK, and a couple of parts of Europe, but mostly Canada and the US.
Okay. Well, let's let our audience get to know you. Let's go back in your life. Where were you born and what were you like growing up?
I was born in St. John's, Newfoundland, on the other side of Canada. Okay. So, I don't know if you've ever heard of Newfie jokes, but have you ever heard of jokes that sort of poke fun at a particular type of people?
Of course.
Well, boy, geez, we resemble them remarks. We're good at that, We have a rule in Newfoundland, it's called the 6-year-old test. Okay. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
If somebody has to be 7 to understand it, it's too complicated. If a 6-year-old can understand it, well, boy, geez, someone from Newfoundland can understand it. Here's what I find: there's a lot of complexity in the world, but the truth is, the people do things to feel good about who they are, what they do, and who they do it with. I know people who give away millions anonymously to feel good about who they are, what they do, and who they do it with. So fundamentally, life is simple. And on the one hand, you talk about mastery and getting to detail. The biggest issue with that is that the level of detail that you need to provide to give somebody access to everything that I see, usually just bogs them down. It's a lot of noise sort of thing. So the key is, how do you translate that into something simple? Because at the end of the day, people will do things for very simple reasons. So it's an interesting journey that I've had, as I've now discovered this whole mastery side of what I'm all about.
So now, for the listeners, Michael's why, as we talked about, is mastery. Now, is how he does that is by making sense of complex and challenging things, solving complex problems. Ultimately, what he brings is a clear solution, a clear path forward, a clear way to get results. But before we get into that, let's again go back to what were you like growing up? If we saw you walking down the hall in high school, what would we have seen?
A young person who was full of lots of energy, decided I knew everything, and had my comeuppances when people decided that I didn't know everything after all, if you know what I mean. So I always led with my brain, not my physicality. The closest thing I did, in school to sports would be cross country running, but other than that, I was like, so my bottom half is actually pretty strong. My top half, there is nothing there. Um, so it's like I'm the guy that would try to talk his way out of stuff because if I got myself into trouble, and I would get myself into trouble because I would say something and it wouldn't quite land right. So it's like it was clear in my brain, but I couldn't say it in a way that actually had people get it. Um, so on the one hand, I was actually treated particularly special from teachers, which of course created animosity with other students as well. And so I felt like the misunderstood child growing up.
So what kind of things were you into in high school or even just growing up? Like what were some of the hobbies that you were interested in that you knew a lot about?
Um, well, it was interesting. My sister was a year older than me. I've got a couple of sisters, but one a year older than me was always out there as a class president or things like that. So in high school, she was actually the president of the student council, and she was head girl of her class, and there was a whole bunch of stuff. I was usually the guy that was sort of the smart person that was bookish. The but I finally got tired of having animosity, and one of the things that I figured out is if you start telling people what you know, they treat you like a know-it-all.
Mhm.
If you can actually share something, the first thing people do is they look to see if it's your hand on the bell ringing the bell. If they see that it's not your hand, they start to pay attention to it. So I actually always operated from a strong information base, but at the same time, I couldn't be seen as the person who actually caused the whatever it was that have you notice how smart I am. So for example, while my sister was doing all these, parties in her senior year at high school, the next year I was doing the parties, but at the same time, I couldn't say I'm doing these parties. I'd say, I think the parties might be a good idea. I'll tell you what, why don't I'll just do the legwork and you guys will do whatever you want. You tell me what you want to do, and I'll just do the legwork. Hey, he'll do the legwork. He's like the sap that'll do the legwork. We'll let him do the legwork. But then, I'd say, so what is it that you want for this? Or what is it that you want for that? And I soon found if you can actually provide people with what they want, then all of a sudden the acceptance level goes way up and I'm actually part of the group again. So there was a lot of that was going on through high school. I mean, and I think that as a teenager going through high school, I think they call those survival strategies
Yeah, that's about
in a
right.
social climate. I mean, you go to university, it's a whole different story, but in high school, there was a lot of that.
And again, what kind of hobbies, what did you spend your time doing? What was your thing that you enjoyed, that thing that maybe you were known for?
Um, There wasn't one thing necessarily that stuck out. I was very good at school. I mean, that came very naturally. So it was more around the subjects themselves that I did really, really well. I didn't have like, it's not like I was part of a chess club or something like that or, other groups, and I was no good at sports. I enjoyed watching sports, loved sports. And, I mean, while I was born in Newfoundland, I was actually raised in Ontario, just north of Toronto. And my dad, as a physician, was the team doctor for the senior A team, the Barrie Flyers there. And so we'd constantly be going to hockey games, and I'd love hockey, play a ton of hockey, but again, I was physically, not very strong and the guy with the weak ankles, so I was always on the last line of the C league and the house league sort of thing, but I loved playing it, but it didn't really translate to any reasonable success, but except for a love of the game.
Okay. So you were mostly focused in on school. You didn't have hobbies, you didn't have things outside of school, music, nothing like that that was really your something that you spent time doing.
Played the piano. I mean, growing up, but I didn't become like super special at that stuff.
Okay.
Um, so on the one hand, you know, I had this insatiable appetite for information, but I was also easily distractible.
Yeah.
So I,
Yeah.
you know, squirrels, yeah, that kind of thing, right? And so the only thing that I mean, after school every day, we'd all go to the park where in the summer there's tennis courts, in the winter there's a hockey rink, and we just keep skating and playing hockey, and that was just pickup. It didn't matter who's good at what or whatever. It was just skating, and then once it comes dark, that's when the parents expect you home for dinner, sort of thing. So there was in the winter there was a lot of that, but it
Yeah.
wasn't something I, I did, Gary, I did not excel at that. But I
Okay.
loved it. I enjoyed it. I loved skating. I loved playing hockey. And I don't know, I was just out there doing that.
Okay, so, finish high school. What happened after high school?
I went to university. I went to the University of Toronto, and I got a double major in commerce and economics from that university. And then after that, I actually decided that I was some sort of a management type, and I found there was two types of management. There was like the administrative management, which I pictured to be like the IBM type, where somebody's the boss and the other person's the underling, and they have to do what you say. But then there was more of a supportive type with the, financial services, insurances, and investments and things like that, where you work with a team and you support them in their win as well. And so I took a 2-year program. Year one, they taught you how to sell their products. And in year two, they taught you how to teach the first year people how to sell their products. And then after that, at the end of the 2 years, you graduated and you became an assistant manager in one of the branches. And so that I did that. And after a year, I found that 65% of my time was in management and about 25% of my earnings were in management. The rest of it was from the sales activities. So I joined with a partner who'd also gone through that system, and we opened our own show, and we ended up joining a house where these guys were dealing with multimillionaires, and they took us under the wing and they helped us. They taught us more advanced strategies on how to deal with our multi-thousandaires, you know, so that we were dealing with the little guys and they were dealing with the big guys, and they, provided areas for us, and I really got to learn different aspects of that, you know, um, and
So
so
you did
that
that for how long?
oh, um, 5, 6 years.
5, 6 years you were in the financial advisor
Financial
state
services. Yeah,
services?
financial services, and I mean, the last year before we started, well, actually, I guess it was 7 years, but after 5 years was the last year that we actually had, all the income attributed to us before we started using corporate, structures, and I was doing, I don't know, about 150,000 per year, and this was in the late '80s. Um, so, and then we were just dealing with different companies and stuff like that. And one thing led to another. I was actually taught different aspects of strategic planning and advising and stuff. And I got involved in one company where, um, I mean, I thought because I was smart, I must know everything. I sold a BMW one month to make payroll. You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So I learned lots, and when they say there's a guy with money and a guy with the experience, the guy with the experience gets the money, and the guy with the money, well, gets experience. Well, I got lots of experience on that trip, okay, and I decided, I think there's more I need to learn. So I actually went back and did my MBA after that, and at the time I was moving out west. That's when I went to Vancouver from Toronto, and I did my MBA in international business. And from there, I went back and I started doing some financial planning, but I was also working with a group that they were also doing business planning and stuff, and I was very interested in that. And so I started doing a lot more with regards to different aspects of business planning, and I started with outsourced sales management, and one thing led to another, and next thing you know, in 1995, I went out on my own, and basically doing outsourced sales management. But then you go to a company and you're helping with sales management, but they're teaching you all this stuff about human resources. And then somebody refers somebody else and they go, yeah, yeah, we got the sales thing done. Do you know anything about human resources? As a matter of fact, and you just learn from different people as you go, sort of thing. And I'd always take different courses along the way, but one thing led to another. I just continued to evolve my learning and understanding of what it takes to run a business.
Yeah. And so what was the impetus, if you will, for saying, I got to get out of the y- um, financial services space and get into international business?
Well, there was one time when so I had a vice principal of the school, um, and his wife, who was an administrator in the school, and, they came to us, they were referred to us, and I got them involved in an investment, a real estate investment, and because of the nature of that particular real estate investment in Canada, we have something called a T4, which is the equivalent to your W-2 in the US, and this guy was making about $90,000 at the time, and he was getting 30,000 withheld in tax. Okay, of his 90. We got him into this investment. The investment was quietly ticking along, but we got him, 27,000 of his 30,000 back in tax. So his net tax payable was 3,000, and he got a check for 27,000 of what had been withholding taxes. Did back-to-back returns for him and his wife, charged him 1,500 bucks for the returns because that's what we were charging for back-to-back returns. And he loved it, thought everything was great. The next year he comes back and he says, "Can you take care of me again?" Like, "I loved what you did for me in taxes and all that." And I said, "Sure." The same investment qualified the next year again to get him another 27,000 back in taxes and, paying a net 3. Sent him a bill for $1,500 for the back-to-back returns, and he's like, "What's this for?" I said, "Well, we charged $1,500 for back-to-back returns. Do you remember the same as last year?" And he's like, "Yeah, but last year you saved me $27,000. I said, "Well, we did again this year." He said, "Yeah, but you already did that. That's already there. What have you done lately for me?" And I'm like, so what I discovered there was you can only save somebody so much tax. It's very difficult to save them more tax than they actually paid. Although, there are some things to do, but it's pretty rare. And if you put them in higher yield investments, they actually like you could lose your money in those things. Okay? But if you help somebody sell more, they keep paying you more. There's no lid on that one. So I kind of like that idea. And that's literally how I got into business planning and stuff.
Wow. That's a great story. I mean, it makes sense now in hindsight, right?
Mhm.
And so, all right, so you went off, got your MBA, started working with companies, learned more about HR, learned more about business plans, learned how to help them build their businesses, and then that became what you've been doing for the last however many years, or
Yeah, just
when
over
was
30
that?
years.
30 years ago is when
Yeah.
that happened.
That was on May 3rd, 1995 is when I submitted my resignation for that company, and by noon, I had a chat with somebody, had my first customer.
Wow. And so now you've worked with many, many companies of different sizes. And so tell us a little bit about what you do with them.
Um, Basically, we help people grow their company in support of their goals and commitments in life. The people that are attracted to us more are people who are interested in growing their company with a view of some sort of meaningful impact for them. So if whether it's impact on some small corner of the world or some community they're involved with, or whether it's impact for the benefit of their employees, or whether it's impact, even for families or succession planning or things like that, when there's growth involved associated with something like that, that's when people come to firms like ours. And the thing that I find is if somebody just wants to come to, I want to scale my business, make a ton more money, we actually pass on that because and there's people that are really good at it, and it's just that the truth is, if all you're after is more money, it's actually really hard because you keep focusing on more money, what you get. When you're focusing on impact, you're focusing on what you can contribute to other people, and as a result, it's actually way easier to get more money because your focus is you're not, screwing up your focus by singular, you know, um, sort of a tunnel vision sort of thing. When you're looking at what kind of an impact you can create with this tool called your business, then you're in a situation where a lot of different possibilities come that wouldn't have otherwise shown up.
Hmm. So sounds like a big lesson you've learned over those 30 years.
One of many. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say next. So let's talk about what are some of the top lessons you've learned over these 30 years that you apply to and help other businesses with?
Well,
What's one of your favorites other than that?
okay. Well, one of my There's a lot of, let's put it this way, there are as many ways to grow a business as there are people. Everybody's got different skills, everybody's got different talents, everybody's got different passions, every different tendencies. If you go into a business, you'll have one form of business based on your strengths. If I go into the same type of business, I'd have a very different way of doing it. And if the two of us connected, we'd have a third set. So there's so many different ways to do it. The problems are all the same. And what I find is that, business owners are pretty savvy. If you can see a problem, you can generally figure out how to sort it out.
Yeah.
If you can't see the problem, but you know it exists, you can still figure it out. You may not be quite as accurate as, or as precise as you would have been in the first one, but we're pretty good at figuring that stuff out. The ones that catch my attention are if you can't see a problem and you have no idea it exists, even while it's got you in its clutches. Those are the ones we kind of struggle with because we'll misconstrue those as a different type of problem. So one of the things that I love doing is working with what are the underlying issues that are associated with each of the milestones of growth past the first million in revenue, that get people stuck. So for example, once I'm past the first million, the typical target that people go for is 2 million. And then if they hit 2 million, then they want to go to 5 million. And if they get 5 million, then they want to go to 10. And if they get 10 million, they want to go to 20. Well, underneath every single one of those milestones is a bunch of underlying issues, and they all look completely different from each other. That's why they're unknown. But the problems are the same. And what I found was that there's two issues that people face. First of all, one of the common things says, as you grow your business, people come, people go, you should really focus on your structures. And there's a lot of places, these are the structures you need. And we're all about building your structures, and you need structures. Well, okay, now think about this for a second, Gary. If you have a business at $1 million, and you have that same business at 5 million, and you have that same business at 10 million, what do those three versions of your business share? Well, number one is you got the same or similar product, right? Unless that morphs.
Yeah.
Number two, given that it's still your business, you've got the same value set. So the values are consistent, and you've got a few of the same people.
Yeah.
But at $1 million, you don't have like half the people you would have at 5, let alone, and a fraction of what you have at 10. So it's like everything else is different. It's like you're running 3 different businesses. They have nothing to do with each other than those few things they share. So you talk about, people come and people go. The structures are there to stay. No, they're not. You blow through those structures too, right? And so one of the things that I love is the distinction between a business as a well-oiled machine versus a business as an intelligent ecosystem. And if I look at the distinctions, what I look at is how is the owner different? So for example, or who benefits from each? So if you look at a well-oiled machine, if you own a machine or I own a machine, you own a car, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Who benefits from the car?
Me.
Yeah, be you, your family, anybody else who wants to ride, all that kind of stuff. In fact, in some cases, I asked one guy and he says, I never see the car. My kids have it all the time. It's like, well, thank you, teenagers. But the bottom line is your family gets the car. So, but if a business is a machine, people are cogs in that system. Okay. And people want to go to a system because it's like, as the business grows, it just gets unwieldy. If you look at a business with 4 people in it, there are 6 one-on-one relationships among those 4 people. Okay. If I go to, I've got one here, 16 people instead of 4. So 4 fours, it goes from 6 to 120.
Wow.
If I have a little 25 person, there's 300 one-on-one relationships. 50 people, 1,225 relationships. And if I go to 100 people, which is not that out of line, there's almost 5,000, there's 4,950 one-on-one relationships within a 100-person company. Now, you may not know everybody in a 100-person company, but you do know everybody in a 50-person company. There are 1,225 one-on-one relationships. Talk about herding cats. Any question why the seating plan at the wedding is so hard to figure out? Because I can't put Jerry next to Mrs. McGillicuddy. She'll talk his ear off, and I'll hear about it for months. I mean, we know these things, right? So as you get this huge growth in your people, like everything's multiplying in terms of relationships, it really feels out of hand. And so people say, well, yeah, but if I can only control it, I can put in a different, and I've also blown through my structures. So I'll put in different structures to try to get them to do what I want them to do. Well, that's like trying to control people. And I don't know about you, Gary, but I don't like to be controlled. My daughter's clear that she doesn't want to be controlled. Okay. And my son does just that. If I try to control him, he just sits back and he laughs at me. You know, yeah, Dad, try again. Okay, fine, whatever. Nobody wants to be controlled. And in fact, if you take a look at it, though, I mean, we've just met for the first time today, right? You don't control our relationship. I don't control our relationship. But you know what? We both influence this thing that's between us called the relationship. So you don't control it, I don't control it, but we both influence it, right? And so if you've got 50 people in a company, you got 1,225 of these things going. I only have 50 people, but I got like over 1,000 of these things going on, and nobody controls it. Of course, people are going to say, well, at least I have this illusion that I control my company if I control these things. That's why everybody goes to this business as a machine. Now, if you look at business as an ecosystem, who benefits from that? Well, guess what? The owners benefit. The clients benefit, suppliers benefit, and each person in it needs to benefit, or else the ecosystem just doesn't work. An ecosystem is just a fancy way of saying how people work with each other.
Mhm.
When you take a look, it looks hairier at the start, but instead of trying to put in structures that sort of corral or constrain behavior, we put in structures that support people to be at their best. Now, if I hire smart and I get the right fit people that align with those values that we talked about, and then I give them structures to let them be at their best, and I put together teams of complementary strengths, you know what? This actually runs a lot smoother than the machine, because nobody likes being controlled. I get behavioral issues here. I don't get behavioral issues if I got people that respect each other, that actually play off each other and feel like they have a chance to do what they really enjoy. On the surface, though, this is so much harder to do, at least it appears harder to do, until you're sort of through that first wave of it, and that's why very few people do it, but the ones that do, their profits just sing. Here's how you can tell somebody's actually built an ecosystem. They never talk about it. They go, "We're just lucky, I guess." It's just
So
otherwise, nobody would believe how do you talk about that?
yeah, give us an example of a scenario like that where there was some struggles going on, came in, created the ecosystem where they didn't have a well or even a machine. They had like structures in place that would allow people to fully be themselves and still bring the company to the level it needs to be at. Like, what would be an example of that?
Well, there's a couple of different ones I can speak to. This morning, I was on a call with a guy. We were talking about one of his employees. The guy's been there 18 years, and it seems like he's at war with the people they give him to actually provide the service. It's a professional services company, but it's almost like he's at war with the people that are there. We actually sat down and worked on a career development growth plan. In the latest book that I wrote, I actually listed all the elements of a growth plan and all that stuff. And if you want, I can give you those. But really the purpose of a growth plan is really to understand what somebody's about. You see, everybody claims that they want to support the growth of people. But here's what happens. I've got my deliverables for my clients, and I got the growth of my people. I don't have time for this. I got to get this done. The only way to make this work is if I can, integrate these two so that as I'm getting the job done, I'm doing it in such a way that grows the people. And everybody talks about that, and that sounds nice, but unless I focus on both concurrently, it's not going to happen. So with this guy, they're like, we got to turn him around. We got to have him be more effective as a manager or whatever. And it's like, so I met with him and I was talking to him. This was last week, and it's like, where's his sweet spot? Well, the truth is the guy's brilliant as an individual contributor. He works really well with others if they're senior enough to be self-sufficient, and if they're hungry to learn, he is a brilliant mentor for them. If somebody is more junior, or they take longer to figure things out, he's very impatient with those people. And then they just keep giving him more juniors and say, yeah, but you have to manage these people. And the problem is that that's not what it just frustrates them. And then next thing you know, you got behavioral issues all over the place. Okay. Now I got a guy who's, he's a more seasoned veteran, and I got behavioral issues over this seasoned guy who's also a brilliant resource to people. So I said, well, what would happen if we actually built an A team for him? So we only give them guys that are strong. Okay. Or if there's somebody that needs to be evolved into it over a 2 to 3, month period. Like, we had one person, she sort of dances at the periphery of an issue until she understands it, but then when she understands it, she locks it, and she's brilliant, and you can count on her for life, sort of thing, in that area. And then there's a couple of other people. There's a more junior person, but then I've got another more senior person that's in there, and it's like, well, what if we get the senior person to take care of the junior person? This other guy can be an individual contributor, and he can still be a technical resource, but he's not sitting there, quote unquote, babysitting the junior guy, which takes the pressure away. And he's in a situation where the senior guy can grow the junior guy, because the junior guy, it's about time he got to become an intermediate. He's been around long enough. And so by having that 3-person team, the senior guy of the three can actually quietly support the people there, because he's got a ton of personal maturity, and he's just a lovely man. And he really cares about everybody. So you're in a situation where that's there. He can actually, align with the specialist. The specialist can actually be a specialist, and these guys can run millions of dollars of revenue through that little 4-person team. Yet at the moment, they're driving each other crazy because of all the behavioral issues that are coming from the fact that people are trying to treat them like this is how it should go, rather than how does it work for you? And
Mm.
they're not the only team in the company. They've got several of the teams, but you can actually build each team based on the strengths of the people and where their predispositions are. And all of a sudden, because they're growing, they're adding different people as time goes on. So we've got wiggle room to evolve these in ways that really support everybody at being their best. So I'm taking a guy that's actually struggled to actually generate the results that he needs to, and we can predict already that within the next 3 to 6 months, we'll have them sitting there literally generating easily 7 figures of revenue for the company at really decent profit margins. And so that's one example of that. And we figure, well, if we can deal with it with the harder case, evolving it to the rest of the company is not going to be that hard.
Mm. And it sounds like what's happening is that we're asking the wrong questions.
Yes.
Yeah, figure out what's the right question to ask to get the team to perform the way at the highest level with given who you have is better than what's the structure we gotta stick you into to hope we can control you.
Correct. Well, if it's what the structure is, if people focus on the structure, they miss the X factor of their entire company, which is the power of these people. If I can get somebody working in their sweet spot, they always do better. So one of the questions that I've learned to ask myself, if I'm stuck in anything, I say, what series of questions will give me the answers that actually break this open? And so what are the questions? So I actually take time to figure out what the questions are that would actually lead to it. And I did that with this thing when we're dealing with the career growth plan for these, for employees. And so we had to order the questions in a particular way, but it's really, things around, what are the job activities that give you energy?
Mhm.
What are the job activities that drain your energy? I need to know those too, because I can't inadvertently stick you in some of those unless I really want to suck your soul out. And so by the end of the day, you're dragging your butt rather than actually leaving with a gleam in your eye going, is it quitting time already? Well, I just need to finish this one thing. I mean, we're literally getting that consistently across the board. What's your superpower?
Mm.
Okay. That thing that that's effortless, but really makes an impact on others. Now, even Superman had major weaknesses. What's your kryptonite? And so we find out about that. Because again, that's what we stay away from. I'd rather put together complementary strengths, because my team has to collectively have the strengths. I don't need all the people to have identical strengths. That'd just be silly, because it never happens that way. You know, um, what are some things that make the job easier? Okay.
Mhm.
I'm looking for, what are structures that help them be at their best? What things make the job harder? Those are the structures that'll actually constrain them. Okay. And what are your favorite aspects? Things that you enjoy about the job that actually create the most value. So we're getting them to put a sort of a pin on or a pinnacle for which parts of their sweet spot really they feel, generate an impact. And then I can move it forward saying, well, how do you see yourself contributing moving forward? And if we were looking at the next decade, what do you want? What do you want for you? And so that's the place where they can talk about, what they see themselves. Well, then the last question I'd have there is, so given that what you want over the next decade and given all the other stuff we've talked about, what are the things you think you need to learn over the next 3 years to put you on track to that? Now, I don't say what do you want to get for you over the next 3 years. I say what do you want to learn over the next 3 years? Because you know that if these people grow their skills, the stuff will come.
Yes.
So it's focused on, we all have a biological need to survive. We all have an innate desire to thrive. But I got to tell you, they're both playing at any given point in time. And if there's a threat, survival comes out first. That's how do we protect? How do I protect me? How do I protect whoever's important to me, whether it's my family, the people, my business, whatever. But you know what? Survival doesn't always have to be a play. Otherwise, why would a 5-year-old ever share a toy? See, because thriving is about other people. And if I don't feel at risk, then thriving is where we actually enjoy life. So I've got survive, thrive. I've got the ability and the need, okay, to connect with others because we know inherently together we're stronger. But I've also got the ability to adapt to a changing environment. So if as the environment shifts, how do we actually protect ourselves, which is part of survival, but also how do we thrive? I mean, even in COVID, nobody expected that we could send everybody home and still have an economy, yet somehow we figure it out. You see an earthquake in San Francisco. Next thing you know, people are taking care of each other. I mean, you see all the different things, we do come together. So the connection and the adaptation are both critical there. If I just use those 4 simple elements of human behavior, all of a sudden I understand my people at a different level. And I'm in a situation that I can actually see what are the things that create problems for them, and how can I support them to really feel great. And you know what? If I've got a group of people that are working with each other, they've got each other's backs and they feel great, that's exactly what actually gives you the freedom that you want in from and because of the business, but it also gives everybody else that same level of freedom. Now that sounds utopian, but I've yet to find a more hard-nosed bottom line way to increase profits than that.
Mm. It's all about the people.
All about the people and the structures to support them. Because I promise you, you need the structures.
Yeah.
It's just that you can't put them first. The structures have to support the people.
So that's one of the things that it's funny. I spent 2 hours this morning on that, on a topic similar, which is essentially know who first, then what.
Yep.
Right.
But I love your question because your question is all about why. What makes them tick? If you can understand what makes you tick, how do I actually use what I'm really good at and put myself in environments where I can thrive? And if
Yep.
people are thriving, everybody loves somebody who's thriving, and it's not just to get the accolades, it's about to actually make the contributions that you want to make.
You're speaking my language. That's exactly exactly what we do with companies. First, let's figure out who do you have on your team? How do y'all fit together? Okay, now how do we put the people in the place where they get to love what they're doing so that you build an inspired team?
And
And
that's the structural conversation around the people.
yes,
Who has to fit with who? Well, if you get that and they've got a common why, you're in great shape.
I love it. I love it. Well, Michael, last question for you.
Sure.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever been given, or maybe the best piece of advice you've ever given?
Saying people say that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so you should listen twice as much as you speak. But that's actually fundamentally inaccurate because only one of those organs shuts. Listen more.
I love it. I love it. And Michael, if there's people that are listening that want to follow you, connect with you, work with you, learn more about you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, if they want to follow me, LinkedIn does that. They just Michael Walsh Vancouver, or our books are all on Amazon, or they can just look at the website, which is walshbusinessgrowth.com, and they can follow anything that we're doing there.
Well, let's talk about that before we go. Let everybody know what your books. I know you have 3 books, right?
I do.
Yeah, and what are the titles and what are they about?
Well, the first one I wrote in 2009, published 2010. It's called Business Growth by Design. Okay, how to design your business for growth, and it's for the smaller business wanting to hit that first million. So we have a little book here. I have it handy.
Yep.
The second one I wrote in 2014 with a woman that her name is Louise, and she actually had contacted us in 2011. In 2010, they did 400,000 pounds in the UK, and she was looking for just support because she was looking at financing options and things like that. Went over, met with her. By 2014, we had her to 2 million pounds, which is about 3 million US at the time, and that's when I wrote this book, Thinking Big is Not Enough. And what that one, and that was the first half of her journey. In the next 4 years, she continued to grow her business to 7.3 million before she put a bow on it and sold it. It was interesting because when she contacted us in 2011, she was already 52 years old. So and she had bounced around between 250 and 400,000 pounds. She was in the e-learning business. So it's like there's not some age limit on this, and she wasn't some person that was just looking for business growth. She was looking for, how could she create her business in such a way that it made it easier for her people to grow and thrive. And so the last book the one I just recently published in May, it's called Freedom by Design: The Established Business Owner's Guide to Grow, Make an Impact, and Find the Joy Again. That's the latest one that we've got from there. And
Awesome.
I do have an offer for your listeners.
Yes.
If anybody wants that book, Freedom by Design, you've been kind enough to have us on your podcast here. If anybody wants that, all they have to do is send us an email, which is at info@walshbusinessgrowth.com. And if you don't remember that, then go to Walsh Business Growth. Find our website and say, I heard about Michael Walsh on the Why, podcast. And he said that there was a free book. We'll, if you give us an address and a phone number, we'll have it shipped directly to you. No shipping charges. If you want the PDF, we'll just send it out by, whatever form you communicate with us. Or if you want the Audible, we can even get you that too. So as a thank you for them listening to you and your willingness to share, my ideas with them, we're happy to do that for people.
I love it. I love it. Michael, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you spending the time with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
I really hope you enjoyed today's episode and that through today's guest, you heard how important it is to know your why and how impactful it can be in your life and the lives of those around you. Be sure to head over to WHY.institute.com and discover your why today. Remember, the more you know about yourself, the more you'll know about others. I'm Dr. Gary Sanchez, and I'll see you on the next episode.